My name is Alara. I'm stuck aqui. Helena.
A sound she had buried for years without witnesses or mercy now. Say it again, he pushed, louder, like volume could make truth bend. You know it, she said. Say it, he said. I said it once, she said. That is enough. Her voice landed flat, clean, and something old shifted behind his eyes where fear slept untouched since boyhood and power learned wrong. He did not yell. He did not laugh. His mouth opened and closed, empty. Fear showed first, raw and quick. The ranch hands froze, tools hanging, hats low. She had lived here nameless, cooking, cleaning, working, and never once heard herself called like that out loud by him or anyone before today. You fed us, he said, reaching. You watched me, she said back. I paid you, he said. You hid me, she said. The room felt smaller. Old women stopped scrubbing. Men stared at the floor. No one interrupted her again when silence finally chose sides and leaned toward her without apology now. She said her name again, softer, not for him. It filled the walls, the table, the dust. He flinched. Not anger. Fear. Like a door remembered being locked. Like a debt remembered being owed. He stared, unable to speak, breath caught as power slid away quietly from his shaking hands right there. Nobody moved. The sound of her name lingered, heavy. He looked at her like a stranger and a ghost. She held his gaze, steady. This was not revenge yet. This was presence. The room waited for him to break the silence that had ruled them for years without challenge memory until ended. He stared at her. His eyes did not blink. His mouth stayed open, empty of command. She did not step back. She did not apologize. She waited. The ranch breathed shallow around them. His silence stretched, thin and shaking, and everyone felt it crack without sound or mercy left to give now. She said nothing more. She had said enough. He could not answer. The power shifted, unseen, sudden. He just stared. Fear stayed on his face. The room held still around his quiet, and that stare carried forward, unbroken, into whatever came next without relief or explanation offered by anyone present there then. No one spoke. A chair creaked somewhere and stopped. He did not move his hands. She did not look away. The air felt tight. Someone swallowed. Someone waited for him to recover. He did not. The stare held, hard and empty, ruling the room the way he once had without speaking now. She stayed where she was. Her name hung between them. He finally closed his mouth, still saying nothing. His eyes stayed on her, stunned. Fear did not leave. It rooted him there. The chapter ended on that look, unbroken, carrying straight ahead into the next moment without mercy or escape offered yet. He kept staring at her, and the room waited with him. No one spoke. The silence stretched longer than it should, thin and uncomfortable. Someone shifted their boots. Someone else stopped breathing too loud. The look on his face did not change, but his eyes moved now, quick, unsure, searching the walls for something to save him from what he had just lost. Don't say it like that, one of the men muttered, not looking at her. Like what? Another asked. Like you owe her, the first said. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Heads turned. A few women froze mid-motion. One old woman set down her cloth and did not pick it back up. He finally blinked. The spell broke just enough for sound to return. He cleared his throat. His voice came out wrong, thin. He tried to say her name again and failed halfway through. When he finished it, it came out low, almost careful, like stepping on broken glass. She did not answer. She did not correct him. She just watched. The way people were watching now felt different. Not curious. Measuring. Ranch hands exchanged glances. They had worked this land their whole lives and suddenly felt unsure who stood at the center of it. Someone mentioned the sheriff without meaning to. The word slipped into the air like a warning. No one had sent for him yet, but his shadow was already there, stretched long by habit and fear. Authority always arrived before the man. He shifted again, unable to hold her eyes. That was new. He looked down at the table, at the scratches and stains he had never noticed. He pressed his palm flat like he could still anchor himself. "You don't have to make this a thing," he said. "It already is," she said. He laughed, tried to. The sound died quick. A ledger sat open nearby, pages yellowed, numbers tight and careful. Someone had written her name on a clean line for the first time. The ink looked too dark, like it bled through the page and kept going. "Who did that?" he snapped. Nobody answered. The old woman finally spoke. "It was time," she said. He looked at her like she had slapped him. He turned back to the housekeeper, to his wife, to the woman he had never named out loud until today. "Don't say it like that," someone whispered again. "Like what?" another asked. "Like you owe her," came the answer, louder now. He heard it. His jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward the door, then back, then down again. Outside, an engine roared too fast, too close. Dust rose. A truck came up hard and stopped. The sound cut through the room, through the staring, through the fragile quiet he could not hold anymore. The engine died mid-breath, sharp and final, and every head turned as the door opened and boots hit the ground without hurry or apology. The sheriff didn't speak at first. He just set the papers down on the table, letting them slide into the rough wood with a soft slap that fell louder than anything anyone had said all morning. The ranch owner's hand twitched above them, hovering, uncertain. Her name was already written across the top, bold enough to make him blink. He tried to laugh, a bark that cut off halfway, thin and hollow. She did not sit. She stood, back straight, hands folded in front of her, eyes calm and unblinking. "Who told you?" he asked finally, voice shaky. "You did." "Years ago," she said. "I don't remember," he said. "I do," she said. The sheriff shifted, watching, fingers brushing the edge of the papers. There was something dangerous beneath the calm here, something he had not expected. Fear, yes, but deeper, quieter, something old, patient, and waiting. The ranch hands shifted behind them, boots scuffing dirt, tools half lowered. No one dared speak. A chair creaked somewhere, and it sounded loud enough to break the tension, but they all froze anyway. She did not glance at the papers, she did not glance at him. She only waited, letting the weight of her presence press down on the table, on the room, on the air itself. He laughed again, louder, then coughed. "You can't," he said. "You can't do this." "I can," she said. "You think I won't," he said, voice rising. "I already have," she said. The sheriff cleared his throat, leaned forward, resting both hands on the table, eyes scanning everyone in the room, feeling the charge in the air. Ink bled slightly through the cheap paper, dark and alive, like it wanted to be noticed. The sheriff noticed it. The ranch owner noticed it. Only she stood calm, silent. A well was mentioned, only in passing, a place she had been forbidden to touch. He moved to interrupt, but she cut him off with a tilt of her head, eyes steady. "You can't hide it now," she said. "The papers don't lie." He swallowed. He looked down, hands clenching and unclenching. He tried to speak but found no words that fit. The sheriff's gaze sharpened, reading him like a book he'd never wanted to open. The quiet stretched, too long, and the tension began to hum under the skin of the room. "You think this matters," he said finally. "It does," she said. "You've spent years thinking it didn't," he said. She stepped closer to the papers, slowly, deliberately, and her hand hovered over them, but did not touch. It was enough. The weight of her gaze forced him back in his chair. His laugh failed again, and he ran a hand through his hair, muttering to himself. The sheriff cleared his throat once more, firm this time. "There's a question," he said. "Only one." All eyes turned to her. She did not flinch. The air between them thickened, alive, waiting for the answer she was about to give, and the room held its breath as the chapter closed, her voice about to spill into what would come next. She looked at him, the ranch owner, and the fire in the hearth sputtered as if it, too, were listening. "You don't get to finish my sentences," she said, voice sharp, cutting across the room like a knife. "I fed you," he said, reaching for a laugh that never came. "You watched me," she said, stepping closer, hands clenched at her sides. His face tightened. He opened his mouth, closed it again, unsure what argument could survive the weight of her calm. The room smelled of smoke and old wood. Chairs scraped softly against the floor, boots shifting, dust settling from earlier commotion. She paused just long enough to remember another woman, someone she had lost before this house ever became hers. Her mother's voice, distant, sharp with disappointment or warning, hovered behind her eyes. She swallowed it down, letting it sit in the pit of her chest. "You think this is about me?" he said finally. "It is," she said. "And it always was." He leaned back, running a hand over the edge of the table, fingers trembling. She did not move. She did not flinch. The sheriff, standing quiet in the corner, watched him like a shadow stretched too thin. No one spoke for a moment, letting the tension roll and settle, waiting. "You know what happens when women speak here," he said, quieter this time. "I know what happens when they stay silent," she said. He laughed softly, bitter. "You think marriage changes that?" She did not answer. His hands flexed, tightening and releasing, trying to grasp control that had already slipped. He opened his mouth again, then stopped, looking at her as if realizing for the first time that the game had shifted under his feet. The room shifted with them. Ranch hands stared, unsure whose side to take. An old woman muttered under her breath and went back to sweeping, slow and deliberate. Dust hung in the beams. Firelight flickered across their faces. He tried again, softer now. "You can't." "Marry me," he said, voice low, almost a whisper. She did not respond. The words lingered, heavy, dangerous, meant for ears that could not yet hear them fully. She remembered the well outside, dark and hollow, and the graves without markers she had seen as a child, left alone to ponder the absence of names. She thought of her mother's warning about naming things that were not yours to name. She had hidden herself, her name, her existence for years to survive. Now, standing here, she realized the silence had ended not by chance but by choice. "You never let me speak," she said, finally, not looking away from his face. He opened his mouth, closed it, a fleeting shadow of fear crossing his features. "I tried," he said weakly. "You tried to control me," she said, voice calm but cutting. The sheriff shifted, clearing his throat, a reminder that someone else was still watching. The air felt thick, like it could choke. He leaned forward, hands on the table, trying again. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said, pleading. "I understand enough," she said. His chair scraped against the floor. He looked at the fire, the walls, the room, like each held a secret he could no longer reach. The house had ears, and it had seen this coming. She stepped back slightly. Silence followed her, heavy and full. The ranch hands waited for her to falter. She did not. She had learned to survive in this silence for too long to be shaken now. The room waited, the fire sputtered, the sheriff's eyes followed, and he said it again, low and urgent, almost breaking himself, "Marry me." Her lips did not move, her eyes did not waver, and the words hung between them, unresolved, as the chapter closed. The word had barely left his lips before whispers spread. She heard them in the kitchen, along the hall, even outside where the ranch hands leaned against posts and smoked. 7 days, someone said. 7 days and everyone knew. She did not flinch. She walked past them, head high, feeling the weight of eyes on her like knives, but lighter than the years she had carried in silence. "You don't love him," one of the older ranch hands said, voice sharp. "I don't need to," she said, not slowing. "That's not how this works," another said. "It is now," she said, and the words dropped like stones, heavy and deliberate. The men stopped mid-motion, eyes darting between her and him, and she felt the power shift quietly, unmistakably, like water moving under a frozen surface. He tried to laugh it off in front of the workers. His mouth trembled. You can't, he said. You can, she said. You're making a mistake, he said. Perhaps, she said. Perhaps not. The sheriff lingered near the doorway, hands on his belt, silent but present, like the last line of defense or a witness waiting to see which way the wind would blow. She asked for one condition. Only one, she said. Everyone stopped. Heads turned. He froze. The men and women waiting for scandal or defiance or failure had to lean in to hear. She would not marry in the old chapel. She would marry in the house, where the past could not watch uninvited. He nodded, because he had no choice, because he had already lost the argument before it began. The news moved faster than any horse could carry it. By noon, the ranch was alive with murmurs. Old families whispered in corners. Ranch hands exchanged glances, some incredulous, some afraid. A woman carrying buckets stopped halfway to the barn and stared at her, mouth tight, eyes wide. The words, her name, her decision, reverberated everywhere she went. She kept walking, slow and deliberate, letting the weight of what she had chosen settle like dust in every room. The sheriff pulled her aside once, his eyes firm. You've done this too fast, he said. It's too late, she said. I know, he said, and there was no judgment, only recognition. He could not stop it. No one could. The choice was hers. It always had been. She straightened her shoulders, feeling the years of silence stretching behind her and falling away with each step. Ranch hands looked at each other in disbelief. Some laughed nervously, some muttered under their breath, some did nothing at all. She did not pause to see who would follow. Her feet carried her forward, and the rest of the world had to adjust or watch her go. A calendar hung on the wall, pages torn away one by one, marking the passage of days too fast for anyone to catch up with. Even the church bell, tested once by the wind, stayed silent. No one rang it. They knew better now. She moved through the house, collecting herself, tracing her fingers along surfaces she had cleaned 1,000 times before but had never truly touched. The walls seemed to shift, welcoming her, acknowledging her claim in quiet recognition. He appeared in the hallway, eyes wide. You're sure? He said, voice trembling. I am, she said. There was no hesitation, no faltering. She turned back toward the door, letting the sunlight catch her face, casting it in sharp angles. The sheriff nodded once, approving the unspoken statement that what had begun would not be undone. By nightfall, the papers lay ready, and the license awaited her signature. She paused, pen hovering above it, the ink wet and glinting, reflecting the firelight. One deep breath, and she signed. The chapter closed on the smear of her name, bold and final, as the room exhaled with her and the world shifted around her decision. She walked through the main hall like she belonged there now. Someone muttered, "Housekeeper," and she stopped, turned slowly, eyes hard. You sleep upstairs now, she said. I always did, he said, voice small, uncertain. The words hung between them, and for the first time, no one dared laugh or argue. The air had changed. The word she carried now carried weight. It shifted the room without a single gesture. Ranch hands paused mid-task. The old women looked up from their sweeping, their faces a mixture of shock and wary respect. Even the men who had once held authority over her stepped back, unsure how to act, unsure what had changed, and unsure if they wanted to test it. She moved past them, silent, and the room seemed to recognize her. Dust motes hung in beams of firelight, waiting to settle where she passed. He followed her through the doorway, glancing at her like he might try to protest, but no words came. He didn't argue when she took the keys from the hook, jingling them softly, letting the sound announce a new ownership. The weight of the metal in her hand was proof of a shift no one could reverse. She opened the door at the end of the hall, a locked room that had been off-limits for years. Her fingers pressed the latch, and it clicked open without resistance. Inside, the room smelled of old paper and stale air. Letters stacked in corners, faded photographs leaning against walls, objects collected and forgotten, waiting. She stepped in carefully, letting her gaze sweep over the small space, touching shelves and surfaces that had never felt her presence before. The letters were her first discovery, her first evidence that the house could yield secrets when she chose to enter. He said nothing. He lingered at the doorway, eyes flicking nervously from her to the walls. "You shouldn't touch those," he said, trying, but she ignored him, letting the quiet power of her movement speak louder than words ever could. The room seemed to hold its breath around her, the air thick with history and expectation. She felt no fear, only the weight of years finally lifting. Outside, the ranch had grown still. Even the animals seemed to sense the change. Doors stayed closed. Tools lay down where they were last used. Voices softened into whispers or stopped entirely. She moved among the forgotten things, careful not to disturb more than necessary, yet claiming ownership with each step, each touch, each glance. Keys jingled again as she placed them carefully on the table. They weren't just metal anymore. They were authority. They were promise. They were the first tangible proof that her word now mattered. She didn't glance back. She didn't ask for confirmation. The room had already recognized her. Night deepened, and shadows crawled along the walls, following her movement. She examined the shelves more closely, fingers brushing against envelopes, notes, reminders of things kept secret. Each item seemed to tremble as if acknowledging her presence. For the first time, she understood that some rooms had been silent not because they had nothing to say, but because no one had been ready to listen. He shifted again, uneasy, lingering near the doorway as if daring himself to cross into her newfound domain. She didn't wait for him to leave. She moved among the letters, lifting them gently, reading names and dates, memorizing the edges of old promises and broken agreements. Each page she touched reminded her of the power of visibility, of names spoken and kept, and of the authority she now commanded simply by being seen. The house itself seemed to settle around her. Floorboards no longer creaked in complaint, shadows stopped clinging to corners, and air seemed lighter, though thick with memory. She picked a letter at random and let the envelope slip open, paper soft beneath her fingers. The room held in anticipation, a quiet, expectant witness to the unfolding of secrets that had waited decades for her arrival. Outside, distant voices drifted over the land, unsure, whispering, testing the truth of what they'd heard. She did not respond. The house was hers now, and the letters, the keys, the locked room, everything within, was no longer forbidden. The night closed around her quietly, the kind of silence that did not oppress but recognized her claim. She let the first envelope fall lightly back into the pile, and the soft rustle of paper was almost ceremonial. He shifted again, closer this time, uncertain, like he might finally challenge her authority. She did not move to confront him. The letters, the keys, the locked room, they did the speaking. Her presence filled the space with unspoken certainty, an authority that needed no argument, no applause, no recognition beyond the quiet acknowledgement of what had been hers all along. For the first time, she felt the word wife settle over her. It was not just a title. It was recognition, a new weight, a new power, and a responsibility she could choose to carry or discard. She chose to carry it, letting it guide her hands as she explored the room further. Shadows shifted, walls held their breath, and the house seemed to sigh with relief at finally being in her hands. Her steps slowed, deliberate. Every object she touched, every letter she read, confirmed that this space had belonged to someone for too long without a voice. She was that voice now. Night deepened outside, stars distant, cold, and indifferent, yet the house glowed softly around her, carrying the warmth of ownership, presence, and inevitability. And when she finally straightened, the room seemed lighter. The keys jingled softly in her hand. The letters rested in neat piles, silent witnesses. Shadows curled back into corners, acknowledging her command. The chapter closed on her quiet claim, the first night of authority settled and unbroken, the locked room no longer forbidden, and the housekeeper finally standing as the one who decided what mattered within its walls. She read until her fingers ached. The letters were older than she expected, edges soft, ink faded but angry. Names repeated. Dates circled. Her name crossed out again and again, heavy lines meant to erase. She stacked them by order, slow, careful. "This was never yours," she said quietly. He stood behind her, pale. "It was given," he said. "It was stolen," she said, not turning. He took a step forward. "You don't understand how things worked then." "I understand exactly," she said. "You understand what you want to remember," he said. She faced him. You buried what scared you, she said. He opened his mouth. She held up a letter. A death ruled an accident. Lands signed away. Silence bought cheap. The sheriff's boots sounded outside before anyone saw him. Gravel shifted. A door creaked. She didn't look up. The room felt smaller, tighter, like it knew it was about to be exposed. He tried again. This was never meant for you to see. It was meant to stay buried, she said. Like her. Like my name. The sheriff stepped into the doorway, hat in hand, ice-tired. What did you find? He asked. She held out the papers. He took them slowly, reading without speaking. His jaw tightened. He swallowed once. This changes things, he said. It already changed, she said. You just arrived late. He moved closer to the window, light catching the paper. This wasn't an accident, he said. No, she said. This was a plan. The ranch owner shook his head. You don't know what you're doing, he said. She laughed once, short. I know what I'm doing now. She saw it clearly then. The marriage was leverage. Not shelter. Not forgiveness. A key. He had thought it would quiet her. He had thought it would bind her. Instead, it unlocked everything he hid. She felt no guilt. Only focus. You married him to get this, the sheriff said. I married him to stop running, she said. Same thing, he said. She didn't argue. The sheriff kept reading. Red string fell from one envelope, loose, forgotten. He lifted it, eyes narrowing. Who tied this? He asked. He did, she said. He tied everything together so no one would pull. Dirt smudged the corners of the pages. Someone had handled these with hands that worked the ground. Outside, metal struck stone. Once. Twice. A shovel. The sound cut through the room. The ranch owner went still. Stop that, he called out, voice cracking. The sound didn't stop. The sheriff looked at him. Who's digging? He asked. No answer. She felt it in her chest before she heard it again. The ground knows, she said. The sheriff met her eyes. He nodded once, slow. He stepped back toward the door. Stay here, he said. She didn't move. The shovel hit something solid. The sound changed. Hollow. Wet. A murmur rose outside. Feet shuffled. Voices layered. The ranch owner backed up, shaking his head. Please, he said. She said nothing. The sound carried into the room, steady, unavoidable. Digging. Unearthing. The sheriff turned back once. We're going to need everyone, he said. She held the letters tighter. They heard it. All of it. The truth wasn't quiet anymore. The chapter closed with the shovel scraping again, closer now, louder, as the buried past forced its way into air and waiting eyes. The shovel struck again, thudding against something that was not dirt. She heard it, felt it in her chest, a low vibration that traveled through the floorboards of the house. He backed up, hands trembling at his sides. Stop digging, she called, voice flat. No, someone answered from outside, gravel crunching under boots. Please, he whispered. Say her name, she said, and the air seemed to tighten, carrying the command beyond the walls, beyond his fear. The well sat just beyond the edge of the barn, dark and hollow, its water black in the fading light. Bones surfaced near its edge, careful hands brushing dirt aside, revealing fragments of what had been buried and forgotten. The ranch owner went white, stepping back, hands raised. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he muttered. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The ground was telling its story now, and it was loud enough for everyone to hear. People gathered without being called. They came from barns, fields, and hallways, faces pale, eyes wide. Old families, ranch hands, neighbors, they all stopped, forming a loose circle, watching as history clawed its way out of the soil. No one spoke. Dust rose from the churned earth, glinting in the firelight of lanterns hung along the fence. The air smelled of damp dirt and something older, heavier, like memory itself. He stepped forward. Half confession fell from his lips, trembling, broken. He didn't say why. He didn't need to. The dirt, the bones, the dark water at the edge of the well said it for him. She did not comfort him. She did not soften or look away. She stood steady, letters pressed against her chest, eyes fixed on what the earth had revealed. A child whispered her name from the crowd. It echoed across the dirt, carried by the wind into the night. The sheriff stepped closer, cuffs in hand. The metallic click rang loud against the stillness, sharp and final. The ranch owner froze, realizing too late that the consequences of buried secrets were now unavoidable. The sheriff said nothing more. His eyes rested on her, waiting for the next move. She knelt briefly, tracing the dirt with her fingers, feeling the weight of history under her nails. The red string from the letters she had read fluttered in her other hand, snapping slightly in the wind. Every shard of earth, every bone, every mark left in the soil seemed to hum beneath her touch. The past was alive now. It would not be ignored. The ranch hands stared, unsure where to step. Some averted their eyes. Some whispered half-formed apologies. The old women murmured prayers, quiet, incomplete. The land had spoken, and it demanded attention, demanded recognition, demanded accountability. The sheriff's gaze never left her. He understood that she was the one who now held authority, not the man who had tried to hide what the ground refused to forget. He muttered again, words broken. This wasn't supposed to happen. She didn't respond. She did not need to. The truth had been unearthed, the bones and dirt and water all bearing witness. The sheriff stepped forward and secured the ranch owner, hands shaking, cuffing him while he stared at the ground. She watched silently, eyes steady, letting the weight of her presence cement the shift in power. Night carried on, the wind moving through empty windows, stirring dust and whispers alike. Lanterns swung gently, light glinting off the cuffs, off the bones, off the edges of the letters still in her hand. The ranch owner's voice had gone silent. The earth had spoken. She did not move yet. She did not need to. The chapter closed on her standing tall, letters pressed to her chest, the ground beneath revealing the truth no one could hide. He walked out in front of everyone, cuffed, shoulders slumped, face pale under the lantern light. The ranch hands froze, old families leaned in, whispers traveling like wildfire through the assembled crowd. She stepped forward, calm, steady, letters clutched at her side. She didn't yell. She didn't beg. She just walked past him, letting the world see who was in charge now. She's his wife, someone muttered, low and uncertain. She's the owner, another said, louder this time. The words rippled outward, bending authority that had held the ranch for decades. No one challenged her. Even those who had laughed at her or ignored her presence stepped back, shifting uneasily, unsure what their roles had become in the new order. The sheriff held the cuffs in his hand, metal glinting, and said nothing. He didn't need to. Everyone could see what was happening. The man who had once ruled quietly and cruelly was now exposed, removed, stripped of power. She let the letters slide from her hand to the ground, letting them settle where they could be seen but not feared. He tried to speak, voice cracking, small. "You don't understand," he said. She didn't stop. She didn't answer. His eyes searched hers, pleading, angry, fearful, but she only kept walking. The air felt different now, heavier, charged, like the ranch itself was finally awake. Boots shifted on dirt, tools rested against posts, doors remained closed without anyone touching them. Voices rose, murmurs of disbelief, gossip and judgment, old grudges and long-held secrets surfacing in real time. She let it pass over her, steady and unmoving. She did not need to speak. Authority was in her presence, in her name, in the letters that proved the truth of all that had been hidden. People felt it. They knew they could not go back. He fell silent. Old allies, people who had once nodded at his commands, turned away. They whispered in corners, glanced at each other, unsure of what to do next. The sheriff's hands tightened around the cuffs. The law was done, yes, but the shift in respect, in fear, was hers alone to claim. She felt the weight and the quiet thrill of that. She addressed the crowd once, voice steady, not loud, not commanding. Let what was hidden be seen. Let what was wrong be corrected. Let the ranch operate honestly from now on. Heads nodded. Some reluctantly. Some with relief. Some with fear still in their eyes. The message landed. Authority had changed hands. Justice, at last, had a shape. The ranch owner slumped further, defeated, powerless. His allies melted into shadows, following the silent suggestion of her presence rather than his failing commands. She walked past him, letters in hand, light from the lanterns reflecting on her steady face. The sheriff followed behind, not touching her, but offering silent acknowledgement of the change. The gate stood open now, a symbol the ranch had never seen before. The air felt lighter, though thick with the memory of old rules and old cruelties. People looked to her for the first time, eyes hesitant, searching for instruction, for permission, for recognition. She gave none. She had no need. Her presence, her stance, her decision carried everything that needed saying. She stopped at the center of the yard, letting the silence settle after the noise of the crowd. Shadows flickered across the ground, lanterns swinging softly, wind stirring dust. The sheriff stepped close, voice low. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she said. She felt the ranch shift under her feet, not violently, but irrevocably. Authority, truth, and consequence had aligned, and there was no going back. Night fell over the property quietly, stars distant, indifferent, yet the house glowed behind her, the windows casting light onto the yard where people stood still, watching, waiting, aware that power had shifted entirely. She did not flinch. She did not move. She held her ground. The chapter closed on her, alone in presence but surrounded by attention, finally recognized, finally in command, and the ranch no longer his. The fire burned low on the hearth, red embers spilling light across the wooden floor. She knelt beside the small pile of letters she had pulled from the locked room, picking each one up and holding it to the light. Some she burned, letting the flames lick edges until the ink curled and blackened, smoke curling up like a whisper. Others she tucked into a neat stack, saved, proof of everything that had been hidden, everything that needed remembering. The sheriff stood near the doorway, silent, hands in his pockets, watching her movements with steady eyes. "You okay?" he asked finally. "I'm finished," she said, voice soft, unflinching. He nodded once, understanding that finished did not mean the end of action, only the end of waiting. She had chosen what remained. She had claimed what mattered. The rest could be left behind. Outside, the wind stirred dust along the fence line, rustling dry leaves and the edges of the barn. No one spoke. Even the animals seemed to pause, aware of the quiet order that had settled over the land. She held her hands over the letters, careful, deliberate, as if even the touch of her fingers confirmed that these truths were hers to carry, hers to protect, and hers to reveal on her terms. The fire flared once, then died back. Shadows danced along the walls of the house, twisting with the embers, and she watched them move as if reading the history held within. The letters she saved were bound by memory, by intent, by the things she could not forget. She had chosen what to destroy and what to keep, balancing grief and justice in the careful weight of her hands. The sheriff stepped closer. "Do you want me to do anything else?" he asked. She shook her head. "No. Let it be seen," she said. "Not hidden. Not buried. The truth can live, quietly, without spectacle." He nodded again. Even he knew she was not asking for judgment. She was asking for recognition. For acknowledgement. For the house, the ranch, and the people to finally see what had been there all along. The letters were stacked neatly now, saved for those who might need them in the future, proof that silence had consequences. She let her hands rest on the pile for a moment, feeling the weight of what she kept. Firelight flickered on her face, revealing calm, determination, and the quiet thrill of someone who had reclaimed control, authority, and dignity. The sheriff didn't interrupt as she rose, dusting her hands on her dress. The house felt different now. Rooms that had once been off-limits, corners once ignored, floors that had felt heavy with secrets, now responded to her presence. She walked slowly, deliberately, letting the space itself acknowledge that she had the right to move freely, to explore, to claim what had been denied for too long. Outside, the night deepened. Lanterns cast long shadows across the yard, trees swaying lightly in the wind. The ranch was quiet, but not empty. The air hummed with anticipation and residual tension. She stepped to the window and looked out, seeing the gate open and the property still under her watch. She had no fear of what might come. She had chosen what she would carry forward, and the rest could fall away. She returned to the hearth and lifted the fire poker briefly, arranging the embers to burn evenly, controlled, not wild. The symbolism was not lost on her, fire that consumed some things but preserved others, just as she had preserved some letters and destroyed others. It was deliberate, necessary, and final in its own way. Her fingers brushed over the names carved carefully into the letters, and she felt a connection to every story, every injustice, every truth she had uncovered. They were hers to honor, hers to protect. She let the embers glow, letting them hold the memory without consuming everything, and she understood that this was what it meant to hold power responsibly. She moved away from the hearth, walking slowly through the house, checking doors, glancing at corners, confirming that everything was in its place. The rooms were still haunted by memory, but she no longer feared them. They were hers now, in quiet acknowledgement, in careful attention. Each step she took affirmed her authority, her presence, and the respect she had claimed without needing to ask. The night outside carried on, distant sounds of animals whined through the trees, and faint echoes from the barn. Inside, the house breathed lightly, shadows folding back into corners, light settling over walls and furniture. She paused briefly in the hallway, hand on the banister, feeling the stillness she had earned. The chapter closed with her standing at the center of the house, firelight flickering across her face, letters saved or destroyed in careful measure, authority settled quietly but firmly around her. She was finished, not with the world, not with the land, not with the truth, but with waiting. Dawn would come soon, and she would meet it on her own terms. The house, the ranch, and the people would now follow the rhythm she set, guided by recognition, respect, and the weight of what she had chosen to keep. The dawn broke slowly over the ranch, light spilling through windows and across the fields, catching dust in golden streaks. She stepped outside, letting the early wind move over her face. The house behind her stood quiet, orderly, still glowing with the fire of last night's reckoning. No one stirred immediately. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her to act, to speak, to claim what she had earned. A stranger approached along the path, boots scuffing gravel softly. They hesitated at the edge of the yard, unsure, respectful, drawn by the quiet authority she carried. "What do I call you?" the stranger asked, voice careful, hesitant. Her lips curved faintly. "My name," she said, and the words landed simply, without flourish, without apology. The letters of her identity hung in the air, heavy, solid, undeniable. She walked toward the fields, slow, deliberate. The ranch operated differently now. Horses moved freely. Gates were no longer slammed shut in fear or secrecy. Workers looked at her with measured respect, asking no unnecessary questions, waiting for instruction, but knowing she would not demand it. Authority no longer screamed, it walked quietly, carried in her calm, deliberate steps. Memory lingered in corners of the house, but it was quiet now. Letters, bones unearthed, secrets revealed, all were settled in place, acknowledged, and remembered. She did not flinch from them. She did not erase or rewrite, only honored and contained. The past had a voice, yes, but it no longer ruled her. She did. The fresh grave marker glinted in the sun, a reminder that acknowledgement mattered more than spectacle. She had chosen which stories to preserve, which to let fade, and in that decision, she had drawn the line between chaos and order, silence and recognition. The ranch and its people would follow that line without question. She understood that power did not always roar, sometimes it breathed, steady and quiet, like hers did now. The house behind her let its presence settle into the morning, lights flickering softly inside as she walked toward the gate. She paused, feeling the weight of her name in the air, the letters on the page, the ground that had spoken and been heard. No one moved to challenge her. No one would. The authority she carried was earned, witnessed, and unbroken. She turned back once, eyes scanning the house, the fields, the well, the edges of the ranch. Everything was as it should be. Shadows that had haunted corners for decades receded. Doors that had been closed or locked in fear now stood open, neutral, waiting for anyone who would enter on terms she set. She felt the continuity of memory and presence, her body steady, her mind clear. The stranger waited. "What's your name?" They asked again, quieter this time. "My name," she said. She let it land in the morning like a stone thrown into still water, simple, whole, final. The light caught her face, casting it in sharp angles, steady and confident. She did not need to explain, justify, or command. Recognition came freely now, and the world adjusted to her presence without question. She walked forward slowly, boots pressing gravel underfoot, each step measured, deliberate. The ranch followed her rhythm. Workers, animals, shadows, and wind moved gently in acknowledgement of what had shifted. History, memory, and authority were aligned at last. She felt the quiet weight of responsibility settle comfortably on her shoulders, not a burden, but a claim earned over years of silence and careful attention. The house's lights glowed faintly behind her, warm and welcoming. She stopped at the edge of the fields, listening to wind through trees, soft creaks of wood, distant bird calls. Everything she had uncovered, preserved, or burned settled in place, held now by her awareness, her presence, and her choice. The ghosts lingered, quieter, watchful, recognized, but no longer threatening. She raised her head to the rising sun. Authority, justice, memory, and power all rested quietly in her hands now. She did not rush. She did not falter. She only breathed and allowed the ranch, the house, and the people to see her fully, entirely, finally. The chapter closed on her walking slowly toward the fields, the sun behind her, the wind shifting around her, the letters safely tucked away, the house silent and whole, and her name, the first and last claim she would ever need, hanging in the morning light, simple, complete, undeniable.